I'm Connor Old, and welcome back to another episode of Forgotten Oscar Films. And this week we're going to be looking at a poetic, a tender movie, a movie that I never heard of, but maybe some of you heard of. A good year for film. I'm talking about 1983's Tender Mercies. So if you're new to the series, what I do every single week is I look at a film that was nominated for Best Picture in the Oscars year, starting with 1988 and working backwards, and I decide, and I pick one that I've never heard of, or it hasn't sort of held up in the film conversation very much, and I explore why, and explore some of the other films that got nominated, and see this film, and try to answer the essential question as to why it hasn't held up, but also give a sort of a critical analysis and my thoughts on it from a 2019 viewpoint. So with that being said, let's just jump into the five nominees, starting off with the Best Picture winner, which will be Terms of Endearment. This is a James L. Brooks movie. We talked about him briefly in the 87 episode when this film Broadcast News was nominated. He's a legendary TV producer. He has a legendary career in movies and in TV, so I think overall, I'd seen this movie before I discovered James L. Brooks' career. He has a fascinating career, whether it was The Simpsons or Taxi or Mary Tyler Moore Show. I mean, for decades, he was the king of money and hits, and he knew what people wanted. So he's a really interesting guy, and I think that, if you take your time to discover his filmography. And I didn't pick this movie just because I'd already seen it before, but also I think it's him in general. People that know him because if you watch TV or you watch movies or you know some history about either or, I think James L. Brooks is a guy you should know. Another nominee was The Big Chill. I had actually seen this movie before. This is sort of a classic 80s movie with a great soundtrack. I think people sort of Lawrence Kasdan's films, I think people that's one that people more cite than some of his others. I know of course he's been involved with Star Wars and whatnot, but in terms of his directorial movies, I think that's one that, in terms of his style, I think The Big Chill is sort of a classic 80s one, if not a little bit dated, but I'd already seen that one, so I didn't want to cover it. Another movie that I'd already seen was The Right Stuff. This is sort of a classical, capital A, American film that covers the space age, and even before the aviation, and just getting into the stars. It's an epic film, if not overly long, but very well done. Incredible visual sort of film, but great cinematographer Caleb Deschanel, who just got nominated for an Oscar. So that's a really fantastic movie, but I'd already seen it. And then there was The Dresser, a movie I had not seen and not heard a lot about, but I didn't want to cover it just because it's from director, I believe, Peter Yates, who did sort of the cult hit Breaking Away. He also did the old Stephen King film Bullet, so we'll see. I may cover Breaking Away in a future episode, so we'll stay tuned to that. But for episode, I decided to cover Tender Mercies. Now, if you're a Robert Duvall fan, which you may be, because especially in the film buff circle, he's a well-established actor. People really enjoy him. Of course, The Godfather, The Apostle, Falling Down. So many great movies starring Robert Duvall, and he always does a great job in those movies, and he very rarely sort of picks bad movies in a lot of ways. So you're probably a Robert Duvall fan, as was I. Maybe if you're a Robert Duvall completist, you would definitely have seen this movie. But this one unfortunately slipped past me. I would say that because this is the movie that he won his Oscar for Best Leading Actor. And this sort of movie actually has a really interesting backstory, because Robert Duvall, it really was his Oscar to lose because of his sort of involvement in the film and sort of his history with the film. Because he actually co-produced this film, which at the time was sort of rare for actors to do. In a lot of ways, it was sort of an early example of an independent film. At least that's what it feels like, and if not sort of a true independent film, sort of maybe helped start that movement in a lot of ways, I think, with that actor producing, with sort of being a small, intimate story in a lot of ways, helped launch that independent movement of the 90s. But also had a very troubled production. There have been multiple directors who turned it down until they turned to Australian director Bruce Beresford. He did a really fantastic job with this movie, I thought. But really, actually, the history of the sort of the landscape of the Oscars race at the time was, Tender Mercies was sort of the standalone kind of character-driven piece by sort of a long, critically established actor. I know Robert Duvall had been nominated 3 times before, including twice in 1 year. He's sort of been hot running, he's been building up, he sort of deserves kind of this momentum to get it. And it was actually, I guess, the best actor race was The Year of the Alcoholic, which we still see today. But it was actually 4 of the 5 nominees. It was Michael Caine and Tom Courtenay and the other guy, which I'm blanking on his name, but not Albert Finney. But essentially, and they're all either recovering alcoholics or current alcoholics. You know, so it was the year of the alcoholics. That if you play an alcoholic, you got nominated for an Oscar. And if you, and the winner of the Oscar, of course, was recovering alcoholic here in this film, Tender Mercies. And then, of course, in terms of the Oscars, we see that, you know, for the rest of the year, Crazy Heart with Jeff Bridges, even Bradley Cooper getting the nomination. This sort of gravelly southern, country singing, alcoholic is something that we've seen many times before, but this one is actually a different take on it. So actually transitioning into my thoughts now. I really enjoyed this movie, and I think Tender Mercies is a perfect name for it, because the movie, in a lot of ways, is tender. It's, if you don't know, it's about the story about this man who wakes up at a motel and has no money. He's clearly an alcoholic, waking up from some sort of bender, and then he makes a deal with the hotel, the motel manager, that he'll work for money, and then ultimately they fall in love relatively quickly, which is maybe a gripe I have with the movie, because he is a man who's much older than this woman, and it feels kind of forced at the beginning, because I think I counted like 16 minutes. That's after the sort of opening credits, and then they meet and then they fall in love. But over the film, as that relationship definitely builds, it understands it a little bit more and fleshes out a little bit more, so that when I'm looking back on it now, I'm still going, well, there were some sweet moments. I understood the relationship by the end of the movie. I think that's crucial, because this movie, I think, is definitely watch the whole thing and then you'll sort of get it, because it's a lot of ways, I think, a visual film, and what I really enjoyed about that, Bruce Beresford, Australian director, but his cinematographer, legendary Australian cinematographer, with Peter Weir and whatnot. Russell Boyd did this, and really understands sort of the isolation. Because this motel is in sort of this middle of nowhere. I mean, there's nothing for miles. It's just this motel and this gas station and this family. But really, the story starts to pick up when pretty soon, and we realize that he is an aging sort of country star. He's a country star who everyone really enjoys. That sort of has stopped producing music, and people want him to get back, and people sort of respect him. And he could easily make a lot of money going to shows and whatnot. But he clearly just doesn't want that. And it's a struggle between sort of his new life and maybe going back to his old life, because I think it's sort of also just a classic story of creativity versus politics and business. They're often sort of in the industry. So many artists obviously are creative and want to do stuff, but they don't want to sort of go through the troubles of it. And that Mac, Robert Duvall's character, Mac Sledge, and then Tess Harper's character, Rose, he really loves her, and he writes songs about her, and he really loves country and music and singing. And as soon as he gets the motel job, he's immediately singing and talking about his life and talking about his past. And he's written so many songs while he's there, because the creative energy hasn't lost him. That was crucial moment of the film, that even though he stopped singing and stopped being this country star, that wasn't maybe the reason why he stopped. He didn't not like music. He loves music. He just didn't like the sort of the politics and the business and understanding the trends and whatnot. He just wanted to sing from his heart and sing what he wanted to sing. And going back to Russell Boyd, I think why I think this film is different than some of the Crazy Hearts and Stars Born, these sort of alcoholic country stars, is that it's very sort of isolated in this world. It feels independent, because this is almost a family drama with those elements in, and we see sort of glimpses of it, but really everything sort of revolves back to this wide, sort of desolate, middle of nowhere place, but then also the intimate moments within it. He really understands that. And Russell Boyd worked with his art director, Janine Oppenwall, and they did a fantastic job really understanding the homeliness of the home. The home at the motel, there's a motel, then there's a home, and there's a gas station where they live. It's just a great dynamic. Mac, Robert Duvall's character, does great with Sonny, the Rose's, Tess Harper's son from another war, and their sort of relationship. And I think that's what the film really nails, is that, yes, it hasn't really a lot to do with the country star. That's an aspect of his character, but it really is this sort of homeliness. It feels like a warm blanket in a lot of ways, just wrapping over you, because of everything's being pulled back to it. All the things are being pulled back to this home. And this home is really well sort of laid out and planned out And as soon as you jump outside, it's this wide, barren landscape. I mean, it's very sort of American in a lot of ways. You know, not the capital A, sort of American right stuff, patriot kind of stuff, but also in sort of this country, real rugged kind of a way. And like I said, it is a visual film. There's not a lot of dialogue. Max Light is a man of very few words, but everything's sort of told visually, and he has an amazing performance because of his facial reactions, and because of how he sort of, really his body language, how he carries himself. Obviously, sometimes there's sort of arguments, but a lot of times it's the quiet moments, the moments with the family just watching TV. It's the moments where he just wants to talk to his daughter, who he hasn't seen in years, because of his ex-wife, who's also a country star. So it's sort of it's obviously the battle of his previous life with trying to do his new life, and he clearly has that previous life's love a part of him, but he also really loves his new life and doesn't want to tarnish this. But like I said, it's those sort of earnest, sweet moments that really tap into the base of humanity. When he's meeting with the local band and helping them out, and with his family, and just working with the motel and talking to his stepson. Really earnest, honest moments. And that, yes, this is a movie about sort of a country star who's conflicted about that, but it's not really about the politics and the business. That's just an aspect to this character. This is really a character study of an interesting man, shot incredibly beautifully with amazing art direction, and an incredible performance by Robert Duvall. Really carries this film, and you wonder why Robert Duvall hasn't done more standout roles. But maybe that's the reason why it hasn't held up. I don't really actually exactly know, though, why it hasn't held up. Maybe it's because Robert Duvall, while an established great actor, maybe he's always been a villain or a supporting actor, never has a great leading man role. So then a lot of people maybe forget his leading man roles. So there's also a smaller film, an indie film from the 80s, something that just fell under the people's radars and wasn't these sort of big hits that everyone remembers. And unless someone is saying to you, hey, you gotta watch Tender Mercies, this is a really, really fantastic movie, you're not really going to necessarily know about that if that wasn't sort of a film of their childhood. A lot of people in the 80s, they're thinking of the big blockbusters. But really, at least in the film sort of criticism circle that I'm sort of in, and being in understanding and trying to understand film, and in a community of other people who really love film, which this is the point of these videos, to try to build a community like that. I was wondering why this hasn't come up more. I think people might have gone back and watched it. They must have, because it's Robert Duvall's Oscar-winning movie. Yet not a lot of people really evangelize it in a lot of ways, and that's unfortunate, because it's a very fantastic film, maybe the best film I've seen in this Forgotten Oscar Films series. Just incredible sort of quiet sort of moments. It really does feel like a movie that could be a 6-part Netflix series today, but really boiled down to really the essential key moments. And I think it would be bad if it was a 6-part Netflix series, because it would explain too much. This is a quiet, you get everything from Robert Duvall's face and a relationship and sort of body language, how they look at each other, and the unspoken words that I think is so uncommon today in film. That it was really a really relaxing film, and definitely a film that you can tell if people want to sort of fall asleep to, which is maybe negative, but it's a very relaxing film, a very well done film, a very beautiful film. I was never bored, and I definitely want to see this one again. This was a very fantastic movie, and I hope you do. I definitely recommend this one. This is a high recommend from me. But that's about it, guys. Let me know in the comments down below some of those 5 nominees. Which one was your favorites? Which one have you seen before? Next week's actually going to be a really good year for film. That's a very interesting year, because it's like these really big movies, and there's a small movie which I almost had to cover. That'll be 1982's Missing. That should be a fun one as well. But that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you like the video, subscribe, share it with your friends. Do me a favor. That's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. And until next time, stay tuned.